I think that naming the next Nintendo Switch anything but the Switch 2 will put Nintendo at risk of repeating history. The Wii sold just over 100 million units and is the 7th best-selling console of all time. The Switch currently sits at number 3 on that list with over 130 million units sold. In both of these circumstances, Nintendo was and is poised to capitalize on the successes and popularity of their consoles, but we know that's not how it went down for one of them. The Wii U was actually a pretty innovative console, but very few people would ever come to find that out. The Wii U sold only 13.5 million units, despite being a direct successor to one of the most popular consoles of all time. Most people chalk up this failure to naming, a simple branding mistake. Now, of course that isn't all there is to it, but I do think that was one of, if not the biggest blunders when it came to the Wii U, and that is the point I'm going to be sticking to in this video. The Wii broke through to the mainstream in a way that no console had since the PS2. Rather than marketing the Wii toward teens and young adults as Xbox and PlayStation were, Nintendo marketed the Wii toward families, grandparents, to parents and their children, and as a result it outsold the PS3 and the Xbox 360. It had mass market adoption by everyday, normal people, which is an important part of why the Wii U failed. The people who owned a Wii weren't video game savvy, they weren't gamers. So when the Wii U came out, they didn't know it was a whole new thing. To them, it was just another Wii, another version of something they already had. I bring all of that up to provide context, to lay the groundwork of this video, because the most common name that I see people calling the next Switch is the Super Switch. The name sounds nice, it's reminiscent of the SNES, it's the Switch but better. But I think that this name would fall into the same pitfalls that the Wii U did. The Switch broke out into the mainstream in a very similar way to the Wii, although through very different avenues. Rather than mass market adoption by families and old people, the Switch was catered mainly towards young adults. Now, I want you to think of everyone you know who owns a Switch, and I'd be willing to bet that most of them aren't your typical gamer. I bet most of them got a Switch for Animal Crossing or Zelda, or because they thought it would be fun to play Mario Party and Mario Kart with their friends. So when those kinds of people hear that Nintendo is coming out with a Super Switch, they're not gonna know that it's a brand new console worth buying. They're gonna think it's just another iteration of something they already own. This is the thesis that leads me to believe that the next Switch should just be called the Nintendo Switch 2. That naming confirms to everybody that this is a brand new thing. Now, I'm not a marketing genius. In fact, I'm not a genius of any kind. So all of this is just the delusional rantings of a caveman. But when I look at what happened with Xbox when they announced the Series X and S and sales for the One X and S shot up because people don't know, I can't help but wonder, I can't help but feel that the Super Switch would fall into the exact same category. And that's not the fault of the consumer. It shouldn't be on the consumer to figure out if the One X or the Series X came first, if the Wii U is a totally different console or just more of the same, if Coke Zero or Diet Coke are the same thing. Honestly, I have no idea. It's up to the marketing team to make sure that their product is clear in its description. When a parent buys a PlayStation for their kid or someone wants to get into gaming for the first time, it is so clear what the latest and greatest is. Should I get a PS4 Pro? Oh wait, there's a PS5 right here. Easy. Nintendo is in a precarious situation. They have an opportunity to capitalize on the more than 130 million Nintendo Switch owners by selling them a new console that they'll keep for another 7 years and buy more games on. But they have to make it crystal clear that this is a new thing with new features and not just an iteration of something that they already own. So, what does the Nintendo Switch 2 need to succeed? First and foremost, it needs backwards compatibility. When people were building their digital libraries for the first time on PS4 and Xbox One, Nintendo missed out due to the aforementioned Wii U debacle, but they've managed to catch up with the Switch, and I can only hope that they're smart enough to bring that forward. People will be way more apt to buy a new Switch if they can play all their old games on it. That means the cartridges have to be backwards compatible as well, which Nintendo has historically actually done a pretty good job at. The Game Boy Advance could play Game Boy games, the DS could play Game Boy Advance games, the 3DS could play DS games, and I think that the only reason the Switch couldn't play 3DS games is because it didn't make sense without the dual screens. So, backwards compatibility, that is a must. But what else does the Switch 2 need to succeed? Well, it needs to be better. Better frame rate, better graphics, more horsepower. It needs to be closer to like a portable PS4. But they have to keep the form factor. I think Nintendo would have to be insane to stray away from the handheld aspect of this device. Just look at the litany of spiritual successors it has spawned. As for the software side of things, I think an easy win would be achievements. I mean, come on, every platform has achievements. PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, Epic, hell, even Google Games has achievements. I don't understand why the Switch launched without any sort of achievement system in 2017. Put one on the next console. Easy. And speaking of things lacking, themes. Clearly themes were planned at some point. They have a theme tab in the settings menu, but they never expanded it past just black and white. I don't know what happened or why they didn't add more themes, even just basic colors. But if the 3DS can have awesome themes like this, then the Switch 2 can certainly do it. Now let's talk about NSO, kind of. Or more specifically, subscription-based game libraries. Microsoft is leading the pack when it comes to being the Netflix of gaming. They quietly built up Game Pass before anyone realized how important that type of thing would become. And you can see PlayStation making progress, but nothing comes close to being what Game Pass is. Personally, I like to buy my games. There's a few I've played on Game Pass and PS Plus Extra Essential, whatever it's called. But for the most part, I'd rather just buy a game than pay for a subscription service month over month. That doesn't mean that they're not an important, vital function of how gaming works and will continue to work in the future. I think that things like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus are only going to become bigger and more people's first choice for gaming. And I think that Nintendo would do well to implement their own model. This point I don't care about as much, but I know that some people do, and so for them, I'd like to see Nintendo bring in a subscription model with more than just a handful of old NES games. Speaking of which, please, Nintendo, for the love of God, just port and sell your old games. Why is it prohibitively expensive for me to play a legit version of Heart Gold Soul Silver or any other game that's long since been out of print? Just put them in the eShop for $12.99 like you did for Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, and Crystal on the 3DS. Now, I'm going to end this video with a warning, a worry that I have. And my biggest worry for the future of Nintendo is Microsoft. Do you guys remember this Phil Spencer email that leaked? When this email came out, most outlets were highlighting the line, "Getting Nintendo would be a career moment." But I think the most important part is where Phil Spencer says that Nintendo's board of directors has not pushed for more market growth or stock appreciation until recently. Spencer then goes on to say that one of the former Microsoft board of directors has been buying up Nintendo stock, and it's likely he will keep pushing for more from Nintendo. That's insane to me. It's wild that I didn't see more news outlets covering this specific language of the email. He even floats the idea of a hostile takeover, but says that they're, quote, playing the long game. Now there's a lot in this email about what Microsoft wants to achieve, from buying Valve to WB to ZeniMax, the last of which they've actually already ended up doing. But this video is about the Switch too, so I'll save all that for another video and just say that I think this kind of push for more profitability actually hurts Nintendo and it hurts the consumer. When you have shareholders that say, yeah, I'm satisfied, you guys don't need to push margins higher, you get things like Nintendo increasing pay for their employees by 10%, while companies like Microsoft, Take-Two, and EA institute mass layoffs. When you have entities come in, buy up shares, and demand higher profit margins, that's what leads companies who are still insanely profitable, by the way, choosing to lay off loads of workers so that the shareholders can make just a little bit more money, so that the company can be just that much more profitable. And it doesn't end at layoffs, and it doesn't only hurt the employees. It affects pricing, and it affects the consumer. Now, let's take a step back before I get too lost in the weeds of capitalism. I don't think that the Switch should be called the Super Switch. I get why people are saying it. It's a play on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which, yes, is similar naming convention compared to the Nintendo Entertainment System. But I think that the average Switch owner wouldn't know that this is an entirely new thing and not just a newer version of something that they already own. And I have to hope that Nintendo learned from their mistakes with the Wii U and that they will go for the straightforward naming convention of the Nintendo Switch 2. Thanks for watching.